There we are. Okay. Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Pierce County Council and Tuesday study session for May 2025. The time is 12 p.m. and most members are present. We are missing Councilmember Morrell, who's walking in the door, and then Councilmember Denson, who's excused. Councilmember Ayala is online. So all members are present except for Councilmember Denson, who's excused. We're going to start by going over today's agenda to kick us off, Ms. Long.
All right, thank you and good afternoon. This is your council agenda for this afternoon's regular meeting. It is amended. We did review the consent agenda yesterday. Nothing has changed since then. So unless you have questions, I will jump right to section 7, which is proclamations, recognitions, awards, and presentations. And you have 2 items here. The first is a proclamation proclaiming Monday, May 26th as honoring our heroes, Pierce County remembers in Pierce County, Washington, and that will be read by Councilmember Herrera. And the other is a proclamation proclaiming May 18th through the 24th as National Public Works Week in Pierce County, and that will be read by Councilmember Gibson. Under section 8 resolutions, you have 1 item. It's R 2025-150, and this is setting the date of an evening District 7 council meeting. That would be Monday, June 2nd at 5:30 at Hart Church on Fox Island, and repealing resolution R 2025-107 to change the venue. And those are your items for this afternoon's meeting.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Long on the agenda for tonight, this afternoon? Seeing none, and there are no amendments. So that brings us to external boards and commissions. Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. Just 2 items to report on today. First, another reminder that the General Assembly meets of the Puget Sound Regional Council meets this week, May 22nd, 10 a.m. at the Convention Center in Seattle. At the study session yesterday, 1 council member asked about transit options to travel from Tacoma to the Convention Center. That's been distributed to you this morning. So there's a few options available to you. They'll take a fair amount of time, but there are options available. You have those in your inbox if you're interested in using transit to access that meeting. The other thing I want to note is next week, actually June 4th. So June 4th, the Economic Development District has their quarterly meeting. The meeting time overlaps with your joint study session that you have with the Port of Tacoma. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. The Economic Development District meets from 10 a.m. to noon. Your joint study session with the Port of Tacoma starts at 11:30 and then goes to 2:30. As I discussed yesterday, the business meeting component of the joint study session really begins at noon. But I just, there's a little bit of an overlap, so be aware of that. So that's what I have for external boards and commissions for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Taylor on those? And also, are there any other boards and commissions that people have updates on? Okay, not seeing any. I will just update on Wednesday's agenda for the Board of Health and Study session. We're going to be doing a pretty significant dive into STIs in Pierce County, so HIV and sexually transmitted disease, and really looking at the data and trends that we're seeing regionally. So I wanted to flag them up in a couple different venues for our awareness. And I'm not seeing anyone else wishing to speak, so we will move to section 4, which is chair's topics. So flag display policies, we'll start there. Ms. Long, I believe you're going to be leading this. So even though it's chair's topics, I'm basically going to pass all 3 of my topics off to other people.
Yes, so thank you. So you asked to talk a little bit more about the flag display policies. So we talked a little bit about it yesterday, but not in a lot of detail. So we really have 2 different policies that affect us here. So the first is the executive's policy for flag display at Pierce County facilities. I have included a summary of these in your materials as well. And then the other is the council's policy for flag display in chambers, and that was adopted by resolution R 2023-107S. So I'll talk about the executive's policy first, and this is just a summary that I've included. So his policy applies to Pierce County owned and controlled buildings and facilities where an external flagstaff is under the county's control. It doesn't apply to interior spaces of county buildings and facilities. It does provide that flags displayed are government speech and not a public forum for public speech. The policy requires adherence to state and federal law and rules regarding the flags that are required to be flown, the order, the number, sizes. It addresses specifics related to the POWMIA flag, flying flags at half staff, and the display of special flags. So I didn't go into a lot of detail, but I'll focus on special flags because that was what we were talking about yesterday. So a special flag refers to a non-permanent flag authorized by the executive to commemorate an event, a cause, a recognition of cultural, historical, or community significance in Pierce County. Requests from private individuals or organizations are not considered. Only the executive may authorize the display of a special flag on exterior county flagstaffs. The executive must notify the county council at least 2 weeks before a special flag is flown and state the duration that it is intended to be flown. The council may object by passing a resolution, and if that occurs, the county executive must take down the special flag, or if ahead of time, not display it as planned within 24 hours. Special flags will be flown at the county city building. Special flags will be flown only at the county city building, 1501 Market Street, the annex, and the ESB. So those 4 locations are the only locations allowed for special flags. And only 1 special flag may be flown at a time. So the county's policy for flag display has to do with in the chambers. It applies, it also provides that the flags displayed are governmental speech and not a public forum for public speech. So only requests to display a commemorative flag may be made by a member of the council. Requests to display a commemorative flag may not be made by the public or other private groups. Commemorative flags are to be used to create civic pride, celebrate events, commemorate historic moments, or honor or remember deeds and sacrifices, or reflect the great diversity of the county. The display of a commemorative flag in the chambers must be approved by the Rules and Operations Committee. And any commemorative flag flown must be lower than and the same size or smaller than the US or Washington state flags being displayed. So that's a summary of both of those policies together. We did talk a little bit about what that would look like to object to a proposal to fly a special flag. And I did draft up a proposed resolution. This would be like just a template for what the council might want to use if that was to be put forth. So you'll see that in your packet as well. And just we can, if it is something desired by a member, we'll fill in the appropriate blanks for the flag and the dates for the display. And this came up because, as you know, the executive notified the council of the proposal to display a couple of special flags. So the first one would begin on Tuesday, June 3rd, and this would be the pride flag to be flown through Monday, July 14th. And then in the meantime, there was another flag to be flown for Juneteenth, and that would be Tuesday, June 17th through Friday, June 20th. And so those are the flags that have been proposed recently. And I think the POW flag too as well. So that's a recent indication, and the notice that's required by the council or by the executive's policy for flag display. And with that, if you have any questions.
Thank you. I just kind of wanted to have a side by side of the two different policies. Again, we created our own policy last year. Feel like it was last year. And then, the new executive set his own policy. And so I just wanted us to be aware. And part of this is because we will be reviewing the Pride Proclamation, and the first time we used this policy was to display the Pride flag in chambers during the month of July. And it was our space to control, and that's what we went with. But it appears now we will have a Pride flag on the county city building and in several other locations. And so next week at rules would be the appropriate time to say something publicly if we were going to put one in our chambers. I have not had anyone come and ask me if that's what we want to do. So I'm just letting people know it's not something we want to, we need a little bit of a headway on it. Monday morning of rules. Wait, next week rules is on Tuesday, right?
Yes. it
Okay,
is.
so
Yes.
next week on Tuesday, will be a little bit crammed, but if there is a desire to do that or do that in addition, I guess show up at rules to have the conversation or let me know. Is next rules the latest we could make that decision to then put it in chambers, because it was just supposed to be made at a rules meeting?
It's just, any display of a flag in chambers, a special flag, has to be approved by rules. So the
Doesn't
timing
really
is
doesn't.
whatever is up to you. I will note that being a special meeting next week, unless it's on your special meeting notice,
Got
you
it.
couldn't take action on that.
Okay, well then it'll be June 2nd.
You could still discuss it, but you couldn't take the action approving
Okay,
in a special meeting unless it was in your notice.
okay. So then June 2nd would be, but, okay. Any other conversation around flags? Councilmember Krueger.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered if you could discern the authority on this, because it seems to me that there's no reason to address the council, that the executive has the authority to make this choice with or without approval of the council. Is that correct?
So when we're talking, there are two different policies. The decision to display a flag in chambers is with the council, and the executive's policy does not apply to the interior
Correct.
of county facilities. It's the policy of the executive to provide that notice to the council and allow for an objection. So that's his policy,
That
I
wasn't my
suppose.
question.
Oh, okay.
Is it correct to assume that the authority that the executive department has to make such a policy for exterior flag display is irrelevant to the council? It's a matter of courtesy that is being given to the council by seeking approval, or if there's disapproval.
I mean, I think that is apparently the policy of the executive at that time. As you recall, the council did try to adopt a flag policy that was
No.
vetoed. Okay, I'm not understanding.
I'm
that.
referencing specific Pierce County facility. The policy that the executive's office has come out about the county facilities
Mhm.
display. So that is what I'm asking, in assuming the executive branch
Mhm.
has the authority for this policy with or without.
I mean,
the
it's not
consent of-
addressed. That authority of the executive isn't specifically addressed anywhere. I think that probably because the facilities department is an executive department, the argument could be, yes, it is an executive authority without the council. On the flip side, you could say the council is the policy-making body of the county, and therefore it should be with them. So it's not addressed anywhere other than the
Okay.
policy drafted by the executive.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Chair.
We do have executive staff, if you want to hear from Ms. Murray on anything specific, if you feel like you have additional questions or clarifications, Councilmember
No,
Krueger.
I just was seeking the specific authority. So what I'm understanding is whether or not we approve or disapprove is irrelevant. That the executive's office can create this policy and implement it. It doesn't require our blessing.
So Julie Murray, Executive Counsel. So I did consult with the DPAs about, this issue, because there was a prior policy, from Executive Dan Meyer that required unanimity amongst all the residents of the city county building. And I wanted to know if that was legally based, if that was a requirement to be had. And so I would say, it's fair to say our discussion was you as the council, as the policymaking body of the county, do have a role in the flag policy, either as assenting to it or objecting to it. So there was a choice. It could have been, the policy could have been written to bring this and seek advance approval, or for the executive to make the decision and to allow you as the policy-making body to object. So I think there is a role for the council to have. And that's the choice that was made within this policy. Because if you as a representative of the people were saying no, that voice should be heard in the policy.
Okay, that's what I kind of figured. So it is at the discretion, and yet it sounds as if it's more of a courtesy to float that through the council to, as the body of the county.
I would say it's more than a courtesy. It's something that we do need to respect when you act as a body to say no. And that's why the policy does explain that if that were to happen within 24 hours, the special flag would be taken down. Or if in advance, an action was taken, that the executive would need to follow.
I'm not, maybe I'll just ask now. I don't know if there is perhaps a list that has been thought of for throughout the year of potential other flags that would want to be posted.
The only two that really did spring to mind was the Juneteenth and the Pride flag. I'm sure there may be others, but they, again, it's something that has to come up, I kind of like through the executive. We're not asking for the public to nominate flags or to make requests. It is an executive decision. I know that there was discussion like last year for purposes of the council when we got to Native American Recognition Day about displaying the flags. So that was one that did come up. One of the complications is most of our flag staffs can only hold 2 flags. We don't have the capacity to put 6 flags up or 5 flags up, which is why you see in the notification, there will be this sort of exchange happening, both recognizing the legal requirements for the MIA POW flag, and then, bringing down the Pride flag during the Juneteenth period. So I would say the possibility exists, but it's, I think, a little bit different than like your proclamations list, because there's not necessarily a flag associated with every event. But I can see that there could be other ones,
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for the questions. And Ms. Murray, I'm going to ask you to stay here just in case this is related. And if not, then we will move on. Councilman Morrell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the exec for bringing forward a policy that establishes a process and includes the council. And, there is some risks there that he is taking when his party is in power and they call the majority. Things may move a little bit easier than when not. So not that everything is partisanship, but he, the exec is willing to allow that process to take place. So there again, I appreciate what he's doing as far as putting together a policy that there again engages us in the conversation. This is probably more process driven than anything else. And either one of you, Ms. Long, you might want to answer this. You have a kind of a template for resolution. Can you kind of explained what would happen on a resolution yesterday, but can you start from the beginning and go, okay, if a council member wants to put forth a resolution basically objecting to a special flag that goes up, what's the process?
So it would be handled like any other piece of legislation. It would go through the staff review, given that this would probably be on a very short time frame. Once it got on a consent agenda for introduction and scheduling, the soonest it could be scheduled would be the very following week. So you might see it on a consent agenda under introduction and scheduling with a final date a week later, and it's final upon signature and action by the council. So at that point, if it was an objection to a proposed flag display, the executive, if the flag has already been flown, the executive has 24 hours to take it down. If it hasn't yet been flown, then it's the council's objection and it won't be flown as proposed by the executive in his notice to you. So that's it's a quick timeline.
Okay, well, and I, appreciate the simplicity of the way you explained it. But there are opportunities to cut off highlighting this. I mean, it has to go through rules. Rules has to agree to put it on a consent agenda.
That would be the usual case too. I mean, sometimes things are added to a consent agenda, especially if it's of a, more urgent nature. But again, the council has to approve your agenda and you have to take a vote on your consent agenda. A consent agenda requires the unanimous approval of the council. If you can see that it's not going to get a unanimous vote, then a member, as with anything else on your consent agenda, has the right to pull something off and put it in a different place on your agenda. In this case, it would probably be under, it would be under other business. Then the vote would be on whether or not to introduce and schedule it.
And that discussion would be about just surrounding the scheduling and not the kind of discussion.
I mean, I
on-
think if somebody's objecting to the scheduling, you may get into the discussion of why, right? Which gets to a little more of the substance of it. But at that point, the question is whether it should be introduced and scheduled for the date proposed. If it does get scheduled, then you absolutely have the option to discuss the merits of the proposal. I
Okay.
mean, there's going to be a little bleed over in the scheduling discussion, I'm sure, of the
Okay,
substance.
but getting back to rules, rules does have the authority to schedule whenever they want to schedule it or to hold something back if they decide that they don't want to, that whatever the reason. So rules could take a resolution on an objection and basically slow roll it, for lack of a better term.
Mhm.
Or, are we going to agree amongst us that it moves to consent? And then I guess that's a discussion that we need to have because it may not ever get daylighted.
Well, a member does have the option to make a motion to add something to the agenda that's already been approved by rules. Doesn't happen very often, but you do have that right. So at the time of approval of the agenda, you could ask, or you could make a motion to add something to your consent agenda for introduction and scheduling if it hadn't been done by rules.
And that would be done during a regular meeting.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, I just want to,
Yeah.
kind of go through this since this is the first time we're dealing with this particular issue. So, there again, I think I understand it. And, there again, I appreciate engaging with us and giving us as council the opportunity to object to a special flag. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. And thank you, Ms. Murray. I know you'll be back up for our other conversation today. And I want to reflect on the values that we are talking about adopting around collaboration, respect, fairness, and transparency. And I know that while I may not agree with a resolution that comes forward, me blocking a council member from being able to put that on agenda or to daylight it in public to be transparent, whether I'm going to vote in favor or not, is in my brain bad form. So that's part of why I had Ms. Long draft the resolution, so it's ready in case we need it. My hope is that we don't, but I'm not gonna stop it. It's your right. You represent different districts with different constituents who may be encouraging you to do something differently. So that is my intent as one member and as chair. So I just wanted to lean into those things that we're talking about saying is our values. So okay, so that was one of the chair's topics. Sorry, everybody. So hopefully the other two aren't quite as long, but good conversation. So the second one on here is the behavioral health letter. We're going to go to Ms. Waterland to tee this up. And it is in your packet as well.
Good afternoon, members of the council. For the record, Carrie Waterland, staff for council. What you have before you is a letter back to the executive and the Human Services Department. Just a little bit of background for folks. This is not you approving the behavioral health improvement plan that was done by this council in December of 2024. That is done on a biennial basis, so you are not looking to approve the behavioral health improvement plan this year. These recommendations were presented in an informal presentation to the Health and Human Services Committee on April 15th. And they were provided as a way to offer a bridge between the behavioral health improvement plan that was approved last year, the money that is in budget for behavioral health services, and ensuring that they were still in keeping with the behavioral health improvement plan that you approved last year, and with the priorities that the council is establishing. So these recommendations are in keeping with your policy priorities and are in keeping with the recommendations of the Behavioral Health Improvement Plan. I do want to make note that this is a letter going back to the executive and the Human Services Department so that they can start drafting those requests for proposals. Council staff and council members typically do review request for proposal drafts before they go out in public. This will change nothing. You still have an opportunity to review all of those. And then council also reviews the potential awardees and approves those as well for the RFPs that do go public. Again, this changes nothing in that. This is a letter that serves as an interim kind of step between the presentation that they had to start and give them an opportunity to know that this is in keeping with your priorities and the recommendations that you approved last year, and to also let them know that you do have a budget retreat coming up and that you may further discuss these priorities, refine them, update them, change them, and give you an opportunity to communicate back. So again, the point is to bridge this gap between the presentation that was done in Health and Human Services to allow the Human Services Department to start drafting those requests for proposals that will still come to council and staff, and to allow you to still discuss these priorities at your budget retreat and follow up with the Human Services Department and executive should you need to.
Thank you, Ms. Waterland. Looking to colleagues to see if there are questions on any of these. Any objection to me signing this letter and sending it off to Executive Mello and team? Councilmember Krueger?
Thank you, Chair. Just to kind of confirm, so this is really a summary of the summaries.
I think that's a fair way of saying that, yes.
So it's a clarification. So yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for the question. I'm not seeing any, so we'll make sure we get this out relatively quickly today. For the record, Councilmember Denson has joined us online as well, so that's good to see. I'm not seeing any questions, so Ms. Waterland, thank you very much.
Thank you very
We'll work
much.
on getting that out today. And then a third item that's not on here, but we're gonna go ahead real quick.
Quick.
Mr. Taylor, really quick, interns.
Thank you. So just a couple of heads up. First of all, the council, as members are aware, will be hosting a summer intern again, like you've done for the last several years. Ethan Hines, he's going to be working in the area of inclement weather and sheltering, housing issues. He will actually start in the office on June the 9th. And so, so he'll be here for that approximately 12-week period that the summer interns are here for. Secondly, the office is looking to participate in a new program that University of Washington has. It's micro internship program. They're short duration internships. University of Washington Tacoma has approached Pierce County and a number of other governments for opportunities to host these interns. You have to apply. Interns are here for 4 weeks, maximum of 20 hours. There's no cost to the council of that. It's fully covered by the university and a grant that they receive. The impact to our office is just with the supervisor, the mentor during that period of time. We're looking to apply for a summer micro intern to look at nonprofit providers in the county, trying to get a good idea of the landscape of nonprofit providers, what services they provide, their contact information. It's actually a fairly large body of work because there's not, believe it or not, the state doesn't have a nice, easy to query database on this. So that's the project that the council is considering making an application for the micro intern for. There's no guarantee that we'll get selected for that, right? It's a competitive process. Again, there's no cost to the council, but we wanted to make certain that you were aware of that before making application. Ms. Waterland may have some additional information she may want to share with you if you have questions regarding this micro internship opportunity, as would perhaps Councilmember Ayala. So that's the quick summary on that item. Thank you.
Okay, I will look to see if anyone has specific questions, knowing it's a little bit out in the future. We can come back and talk about the micro internships, maybe when Councilmember Ayala is here in person. Okay, but thank you to the staff that are saying yes to possibly doing this, because there is work mentoring and having an intern in. So thank you for being willing to do that to help kind of get the next generation of you Taylors and Susan Longs and Andrea, like all of you need to be able to retire someday, and we need highly qualified people to come do this work. And so we need to get people excited about being involved in local government, and interns while they're in college is a really good way to make that happen. So, okay. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. So we are going to move to grant applications. We're just going in this order. So we'll start with Mr. Boki.
Thank you, Chair Hitchen. And I ask your permission that both these grants cover the same topic. They're two separate grants, but they do cover the same project, actually. So I'd like to be able to, if I may, go through both grants. And then there has been some changes in the grant amounts. I've been informed by Public Works, and their representative from Public Works on the line. And I believe also from the executive's office here, Ms. Murray will want to speak to this also. So both these grants, the first one is Federal Aviation Administration, and this is the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act grant. This is for, the final thing is the Thun Field runway reconstruction, but this is actually, will partially fund the Thun Field reconstruction design phase. The amount of this grant is written as $280,250, but it actually is now $295,000. And the grant is due on May 30th. We just got this last week, by the way, so that's why you're talking about it on a Tuesday. And the anticipated date of decision date is July 1st, 2025. The 5% match requirement is expected to come from the 460 fund, which is the airport fund, which is an enterprise fund. So to dovetail with that is the Federal FAA AIP grant, which stands for Airport Improvement Program. And the amount now was $411,058. It is now $401,058. And the grant, the match amount is intended to come from the airport fund, and the match amount will change now to $21,108. And that will come from the grant, and it's for the same thing. The FAA Airport Improvement Program will partially fund the Thun Field runway reconstruction design phase. This includes design of a full-depth pavement reconstruction on runway 1735, relocation taxiway A4, and tree obstruction removals. The FAA grants will cover 95% of this project. So both those explanations are the same on these items. We have Mr. Mark Shoemaker and Ms. Susan Holdner from our Planning and Public Works Department to on the Zoom to answer any of your questions. And Ms. Murray also, I believe, wants to speak to this also.
Thank you for the overview. Let's start with questions about the grant or what the dollars are for, and then we'll invite Ms. Murray to come up. But I'll just see if anyone have questions about the actual, like what we're doing with the dollars or just in general. Councilmember Morrell.
Thank you. I think Mr. Schumacher is on the line, and he can introduce himself and explain what the dollars are or the grants are going to be used for.
Yes, absolutely. Good afternoon, members of the county council. Is my volume okay?
It is.
Great. Mark Schumacher here, Planning and Public Works, Maintenance and Operations Division Manager. I am filling in for Jeff Campbell in his absence, but certainly happy to provide responses to whatever questions may come up. And as Paul had indicated, Susan Holdner is also here from the Office of the County Engineer. She supports our contract processes. And in regards to this particular project for the runway reconstruction, this runway has been identified by the FAA to be too narrow and so therefore requires widening. It is also a shed constructed runway, so all the drainage flows off of one side, and it needs to be crowned to meet current runway standards for this airport. Furthermore, the condition of the existing pavement has approached its life cycle, and due to those conditions, it needs to be reconstructed. So to provide a little bit more detail, we are not lengthening the airport. We're widening it from a width of 60 feet to 75 feet. And the entirety of the asphalt runway will be milled out, removed, and the subgrade will be repaired and then repaved with that crown shape that I spoke of. Further adjustments to the taxiway connectors, taxiway A4 specifically. And there also is a component for removal of select tree obstructions. However, I don't have the details as far as counter acreage at this time. Furthermore, associated with this reconstruction, they will replace the runway edge lighting, navigational aids, end drains, and stormwater drainage improvements that have also, those components have also reached their useful life. So again, to summarize, this project that's before you is funding the design of the runway reconstruction. And this is a precursor to a future larger construction project, which is on the order of $10.5 million, and will also be subject to the availability of FAA grants covering 95%. So at this time, all federal approvals for environmental considerations have been completed, and we are working towards a design timeline with our airport planning consultant, Dowell Engineering, to have the engineering project completed by February 2026 per FAA guidelines. Any further questions?
Councilmember Morrell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up, Mr. Schumacher, you had mentioned about the $10.5 million replacement. There again, this has to occur. Obviously, we have to design it to FAA standards to get the $10.5 million grant that the FAA has kind of put us into the, I guess, the starting blocks to be able to get that, because if not, then we will fall behind on the maintenance and requirements of the FAA to maintain the runway. So I know the FAA has been out. They have walked the property. They have inspected everything. We seem to have an agreement on a process forward for this replacement. And this will be a full removal. So the airport runway will be shut down for a period of up to 90 days, maybe?
I don't know that specific, but I understand it will be several months.
Okay. And your understanding is the FAA kind of has put us into a position that we, as much guarantee as we can from the FAA and the funding, that we're on the list to get this runway project done.
Yes, as I understand it, it is a competitive process and the construction projects are sequenced in a cascading fashion up to 5 years prior of planning. And so, yes, the FAA is depending on the county to support this project and get this engineering completed so construction can go promptly to bid in March of 2026 and then to construction.
Okay, so let me just ask you, and not a leading question, but just if we don't do this and get this grant, do we have funding to do the design and layout and evaluation of everything within our budget?
No, we do not.
So the runway then would be delayed until this task is taken care of on the design end?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the questions and the answers. Is there any other questions on the actual project? Not seeing any. Ms. Murray, if you'd like to share the executive's perspective on the work before us.
So thank you again, Julie Murray, Executive Counsel. We want to be transparent with the council and the public about what's happening with these grants and basically our relationship with the federal government. I know that you as the council were briefed on the Continuum of Care lawsuit. I saw that in the county legislature. And so I think you are aware of the terms and conditions that are being added to federal awards. And we wanted you to know, in particular with the FAA, they are currently engaged in rulemaking to change their standard terms and conditions to add the DEI executive order, the immigration executive orders, some additional executive orders that relate to electrification and clean energy. And those would become then our compliance with those, a requirement to accepting these funds. And, you know, unless something happens between now and then where we have clarity that we could actually legally comply with those executive orders, we will likely decline the award even if they were to provide it to us. It's very similar to the COC discussion where we believe that we cannot certify that we could meet the immigration requirements with the Keeping Washington Working Act. And we do not have enough information about what it means to promote some of these objectionable policies that are contained in the executive order, specifically DEI, clean energy, because it's not just asking us for actions, it's asking us to not promote these things. And we're, you know, the advice that we've received from our legal counsel is that we cannot, without clarity of these vague terms, actually certify under penalty of perjury. And in many cases, they're asking us to do this under the threat of the False Claims Act, which I think you're aware would require us to pay treble damages if we were found to be in noncompliance. The risk is too high. And so we have also seen in some grant applications them asking for that certification at the time of application. So we're simply not applying. In this instance, the action to require it in the award has not yet happened, and we've been advised to continue to apply, but we will see later what is actually being required in the award. We are seeing that the different agencies are revising their general terms and conditions. HUD did that on April 22nd. The Federal Highway Administration did that on April 25th. And like I'm saying, that they're, depending on the agency that you're working with, how they're trying to attach these limitations is varying. But we have, and I believe you're aware, and if not, I can forward it to you. Last week, Executive Mello issued an executive order revising the delegated authority given to departments for signing contracts and with the federal government or for federal funding. And the reason for that is to subject those agreements and awards and contracts to further review. And so we're implementing a workday process, asking that the staff upload those. We have our designated representatives, and I appreciate that the council today provided us with their representatives. And those will first be reviewed, the terms and conditions by those representatives, and then thereafter going to the designated deputy prosecuting attorney that those departments work with, because we're going to have to really thoroughly review and understand what had been for many years for our people in the department to be almost a rubber stamp, right? This is the fine print of the contracts and awards. And I use it kind of as a joke, but it is real. This is why you have an attorney. We're the ones who generally read the small print to understand what we're committing ourselves to. And I'm just being clear to you, the current state's very much still in flux, but where we see places where we cannot accept those terms, we will be declining the awards or declining to apply. And this was one that we recognized about 2 weeks ago.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. I'm going to look to my colleagues to see if people have questions. Councilmember Morrell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for making it somewhat crystal clear as well as an attorney can make it. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we have a new administration, new rules, new guidelines to follow. But I'm just kind of curious to see if, county can battle it out in court for the next 4 years. But what's the game plan 6 months from now if we're not applying for the grants, not getting the funding? How do we, deal with this as a county? Washington State has the same challenge, but I don't. And that this may be an offline type discussion, but what's the plan? Because I don't see this getting settled out anytime soon.
Well, I mean, we are in federal court, and that may be one of the, actions that maybe change the course of what they're doing across the federal government. Not just us, but there are other lawsuits that are happening. And if we have subsequent multiple TROs, maybe it really is steady state. We don't really know. I think that needs to play out a little bit. And in fact, we are considering 2 awards that the county has received to being added to the COC litigation. We are having more jurisdictions join in that because they're likewise seeing the same thing happening to them. So on one hand, I would say we need to see how the court situation plays out, and does that change their behavior? Or is it, like you're saying, long-term litigation? And then I think this really becomes a budget discussion of what can we do in the absence of these federal funds? And there will be consequences. We may need to look at additional revenue sources to backfill some of this. We may have to look at some things are just going to be deferred, or some things are going to end. I mean, no one really knows. I think we're just in the holding pattern now, gathering up more information, and we are doing an exercise of drilling down a little bit more in the awards that we have received or in process to really understand the impacts, because there may be places where we are going to be backfilling with county money. It's probably going to be multi-strategy, but we just have to recognize the environment that we are in. And I don't know if anyone has an answer today, but as the weeks go by, I think the path will become clearer.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, the lay of the land changes every day. And, you know, the Justice Department's new tack in using the False Claim Act is an interesting way that I don't know if there's going to be a end run on something like that. But there again, I'm not an attorney, I'm just a politician. So you guys can battle it out however you want to battle it out. But there again, if there's a way to collaborate on some of these issues with the federal government, I think there again, that might be the quickest remedy. But there again, if you know, do the line in the sand. then-
I think you point out really the risk, the line that they put forward, right? You put out the False Claims Act for the purposes of some enforcement. I don't know who's gonna, that enforcement's gonna be, but in these contracts, you know, they're signed by our department directors, our finance director, and the executive. And I need to have the security to know that they won't become the example. And if we don't have that, I don't think it's fair for us to ask them to put themselves in that position.
Yeah, and I think there again, the exercise of understanding really what are in these agreements, because you're right, we have rubber stamped a lot of these over the years and but yet not really drilling down to find out what are requirements if something were to go sideways. So anyway, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions? Well, thank you, Ms. Murray. I know when we've had these conversations, I just really wanted to make sure people understood because it's important we apply for these grants. But when they come back to us, we need to make sure that we're protecting the county and the people trying to do the work. So, okay, so is there anything else on these grants, Mr. Boki, that we need to be aware of? Okay, so that brings us to the second largest topic under this, which is our 21-day notice on animal shelter services. And Ms. Kelly is going to be briefing, and then we have several guests to be phone a friend if we have questions they can't answer. So thank you, everybody, for being here this afternoon.
Thank you, Chair Hitchin. Andrea Kelly, council staff. A correction, there's a PowerPoint presentation that I am not presenting. So
Oh.
just an introduction.
Here we
from
go.
me. So we are here today following the 21-day notice received on April 30th from the Finance Department regarding the animal shelter services. This contract duration is for 5 years. It totals just under $6.8 million over the life of the contract. This is a significant increase from the prior contract. Following a decision package request for the 2024-25 budget, there was an increase of $356,000 for the biennium to the Humane Society contract that was to address increased costs for housing, veterinary, and emergency care of animals. This amount is reflected in the 2024-25 budget, but it does not cover the 2025 increase. It's expected that the sheriff's office will be using those dollars and vacancy savings to make up the difference for the 2025 year. In previewing the presentation, the presenters are poised to respond to the council member questions regarding City of Tacoma, who also just renewed their contract, and comparable services in other jurisdictions. And as you indicated, we have a number of people here. So we have from the Sheriff's Office, Under Sheriff Fajardo, Chief of Contract Services, John Jollyboy, Animal Control Supervisor Brian Bowman. We also have representation from the Exec's Office. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and Council. Pleasure to be here. John Jollyboy, Pierce County Sheriff's Office. This is a brief PowerPoint that we put together, touching on just a little bit of context in the beginning, especially since there are a couple newer council members here. So I believe in the fall time, we may do a bigger briefing through Councilmember Herr's Public Safety Committee, along with the Humane Society. So next page slide. We are just a real basic who the Pierce County Sheriff's is. I won't go over each one since most of you have seen it, heard it, or through the various years you've been elected. Next slide. specific to animal control services. In 2020, Pierce County Sheriff's Office obtained animal control services from the auditor's office. And henceforth, we've been operating as such. The auditor's office did retain the pet licensing part of that. The animal control currently provides services for the areas of unincorporated Pierce County, Carbonado, South Prairie, Wilkinson, University Place, Ording, and the city of Fife. Next slide, please. We are currently operating technically with 6 animal control officers, in the process of hiring another one. Hours of operation, we do have set hours. If there are emergencies, we will go out and deal with whatever the call is about. Next slide, please. Types of calls we respond to. Pretty intensive lists. Most of these get more highlighted as things get out into the press, if it's entities or people that have puppy mills or animal cruelty. But yes, quite a bit of items that our animal control officers respond to. Next slide, please. These are the types of animals, everything from dogs to exotic animals and everything in between. Anything dealing with more indigenous animals, that's Fish and Games, who we partner with on that. They take the lead on all those non-domesticated animals. Next slide, please. Receive roughly 10,000 calls a year for service. Aggressive animals are the #1 type of call. And a lot of time is spent by our animal control officers to prepare and go into court for the folks who, mostly animal cruelties cases. A lot of work goes into that, both to find places for the animals, and then we do expect to get some money back, but it can take months, if not years at times. So, but that is another activity that our animal control officers are involved in the courtroom. Next slide, please. We do have vendors that we utilize to deal with the day-to-day, month-to-month activities. Veterinarians, livestock haulers, places to bring livestock, especially for animal cruelty cases, for larger animals, and of course, the Tacoma Pierce County Humane Society. Next slide, please. This gets into previous years for animal charges, starting from 2021, going to 2024. We basically charge the folks that we contract out to, and the animal intake rate, the number of the animals, depends on what previous year's numbers were that we work with the Humane Society on. That'll be the proposed intake numbers. And then the next slide. This is the numbers you all received from 2025 to 2029 for the 5-year Humane Society contract that we are working with at the moment. Little context on that. Last year, Tacoma and Pierce County worked together with their finance folks and came up with a plan, because Humane Society, as most of you know, previous to this, basically doubled what they were charging from $800,000 to $1.6 million. I won't speak for the Humane Society, but in our meetings, it's the cost of everything: veterinarian care, vaccines, staffing, salaries, compensation, and also the fact that for years, a lot of the Humane Society's budget is from private donors, either yearly or in large endowments. So they have basically been subsidizing what they figure the cost of doing business, subsidizing the government, part of what we should have been paying. And so it came to a perfect storm. The costs went up so high, so they came to us with basically doubling the charge. So from last year's attempts to sit down and negotiate with a 5-year plan to kind of spread it out. Again, we worked closely with Tacoma on those numbers and that duration. Tacoma did move forward with theirs. If you go to the next slide, please. They are at 6.8 million for 5 years. And that was approved about 2 months ago through their council process. And then the next slide is an example of our internal talks of finding other examples to say, yes, it truly is a issue in regards to why these costs are doubling as such. This is Clark County up there, and those are very high prices. So, well, it wasn't the best spot to be negotiating in because at the end of the day, we only have one entity to deal with, and that's Humane Society. We did look at other places and other counties, but they either didn't have the capacity or just the logistics of getting animals there didn't work out. So that's, next slide, all I have for today in regards of what you requested for us to come up. I will say that working on this as a newer person, but having come into it, knowing what was involved, the folks that have been working on it are amazing. And also want to thank John Lane, exec's office, for stepping in, because the exec's office and finance both stepped in last year to get things moving forward after the sticker shock set in. So with that, if you have any questions, we have numerous folks here, from our field folks to our attorneys who make sure we do things correctly, and the undersheriff as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jollyboys. Nice job on your first formal presentation. We will go to Vice Chair Herrera.
Thank you. I did step out. Hopefully I didn't miss this. Did you mention anything about the level of service? Is that going to change at all? Anything going to change at all? Is it going to go down, up, stay the same?
We did take out owner surrender, just like Tacoma did, and other entities are doing that. So that'll fall, that full price cost will fall to the owner if they surrender their animal. The Humane Society does do a good job funding ways of trying to work with the owner to retain the animal. If it's the cost is a problem, or mostly the cost, they have vouchers for veterinarian care and feeding and vaccine. So, but yeah, other than that, the service hasn't gone up. The Humane Society has a mobile spade and neuter vehicle that they now can offer. So, but nothing has changed dramatically from the service that they were going to provide.
Sure. Another question would be, some of the service that they provide is affected by their capacity. And so if they're at max capacity, the service could go down because they weren't not going to take any animals. This contract has nothing to do with any capital projects. This is just our contract service to the county. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess my only other question, like many of our contracts, this isn't up to, so there's a charge per animal. This isn't just a set amount that's paid monthly or annually to the Humane Society, or is it a per animal?
It's monthly charge.
Okay.
And yes, and at the end of the year, there's a reconciliation process, which has gone on for a few years. So they will send us their numbers. And we also get a monthly as well, just so our AC folks can make sure we're all in line, so there's no surprises, especially at the end of the year when we do reconcile with them, if there's more or less animals. So, but yeah, it's a per month, it's a monthly charge broken down by the yearly costs.
Okay, thank you. Oh,
Real quick.
we've actually got two now, so we'll go to Councilmember Krueger, then we'll come back to Vice Chair Herrera. Councilmember Krueger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excuse me. Have there been discussions about if the county were to have its own system, or that's maybe been tried in the past and it just wasn't conducive? Or maybe what is the cost of having a fleet of spay and neuter mobile vehicles that can help assist in nature?
Immune Society's been around for a long time and pretty much has done all the business for sheltering in Pierce County for most of the municipalities. Puyallup and Sumner have their own shelter, which is at capacity and for their needs is met. But yes, there's discussions about looking into government-run shelter and also talking with the Immune Society because they have intentions to create a new facility. Just as Councilmember Herrera mentioned, their capital plan to put together for, again, a new facility is what they're looking at. So, and I know other municipalities, Cowlitz County took part of their jail to use as a animal shelter. Spokane County took an old building and made their own animal shelter and took in every large municipality in Spokane County. That's been probably 2 or 3 years since they've done that. So there are other examples around us, but we'll meet and talk about those as soon as we get through this and communicate with the Immune Society.
Yeah,
So we're all on the same page.
It's just one of those hard pills to swallow because puppies and kittens, everybody has a heart on those. And that's why I can't see a government-run one being the solution to this, but when I look at the projections, and it's just not practical to think that we can afford these kinds of increases year after year after year. And so I don't know what the answer is or what all you're looking at, but I appreciate the time.
Yes.
And maybe more neuter clinics would be helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for the question, and you got your question. Okay. Is there any other questions for Mr. Jollyboys or any of the other entities in the room? Thank you, Under Sheriff Ferraro and Chief, and I can't remember your rank. Supervisor. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone with additional questions, so thank you all for the briefing on this. I appreciate it, and we will move on. Okay. Mr. Dominique.
Good morning, Madam Chair, or excuse me, afternoon. Members of the council, Brian Dominique, your communications manager. I'll start with my communications updates because I haven't given those in a while. We are continuing with the county legislator. We had an issue go out last week. The most recent issue had 9,871 views. This compares to 12,052 views last year. This is about a 50% drop in readership, which sounds steep, but it tracks with what we're seeing with trends around Memorial Day, summer coming up. We tend to see a drop in readership, but it picks back up once we get full into summer and people have done their plans, have been planning for like 9 months in the rain. So it's understandable. Always see that drop. Council members have been making really good use of their newsletters. We released 4 e-letters or e-newsletters last week and 2 videos. One of those videos has over 500 views. That is Councilmember Herrera's video for Year of the Salmon. We went out on the barge on the Puyallup River where the Puyallup tribe uses it to do to get the fish count on the fish that are coming back into the watershed. So it was a really cool project. For social media, our social media presence is steady. We haven't had any substantial growth in the area though. I know earlier this year, we talked to the council about the potential of opening up a LinkedIn page. We were going to do some research to see if that was feasible. It is feasible, and we do think it will open up a way to communicate maybe more organically with some stakeholders and community groups that tend to be on there more so than that you see them on like Facebook and stuff like that. We have continued to monitor X as a platform. Over the last couple of years, we haven't been performing as well on there. We're gonna keep it open this year. But it's still gonna remain a secondary platform for us. So if you don't see a lot of activity on X, that's intentional. For media relations, news coverage has continued to cover the federal budget impacts organizations across the Puget Sound. And then for proclamations, we have one proclamation in your packet, Pride Month. To help facilitate with getting the packets out on Friday at noon, I'm going to be asking the council members to get me any changes they have for the proclamation by the end of the day Thursday, so I can send it to them Friday morning. I usually allow till Friday morning, but if the council members can work with us on that, that'd be greatly appreciated. This just makes sure that the packets get to you guys during the workday on Friday rather than the end of the day. And then next week, you will see Older Americans Month and Ride Transit Month coming to the council for presentation. Those came out of rules and operations yesterday with no changes. And then coming to study session next week, Juror Appreciation Month and Women's Veterans Recognition Day. That will go through pre-rules this week, and the council will have its first opportunity to see that as a body next week. Pending any questions, that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions on any of these? Not seeing any. Comment, I guess, is a good way to put it. Do we monitor the comments on our live streaming?
We don't allow comments on live streaming.
Okay. I swear there were comments on something, but it wasn't bad. It was just like somebody pointing out something. So
Oh, you
maybe
may
I'm-
be talking about Facebook, excuse me. So we don't allow comments on the live stream for YouTube.
Okay.
People can comment on the Facebook post.
Okay,
Below
That's
it.
what I saw.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's what you're seeing. We monitor them if there's questions. Generally, there's not. People are just giving their opinion on what's being talked about.
there were some very strong opinions.
Yeah, we don't really address those unless there's like, glaring misinformation that we may address. But most of the time it's just people sharing their opinion about what the issue is of the day.
Okay.
And if I can, Madam Chair, I would like to go back. My counterpart here, Jair, asked me to mention something. I failed to do so. We have a podcast dropping on Friday. It's on the legislative process and it's with our esteemed chair. It'll be our first episode of the year. And then we're going to roll this into our communication strategy for the budget. We did this last year with last budget cycle with a lot of success. So we're going to try to replicate that. And we have reached 1,000 downloads on our podcast. For a small operation like ours, it's a pretty big deal. So we're going to continue to keep growing it. And yeah, we're having a lot of fun with it. So.
Thank you very much. Any questions for either Mr. Weinsberry or Mr. Dominique? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Thank you for the work you're doing. And then not on the agenda, but we discussed yesterday, possibly asking our colleagues that were in the other Washington to come back. If you have time and capacity, would love to hear your learning and what you saw, and I'll just leave it to the three of you to figure out. Somebody push a button, tell me who wants to talk first.
He does.
Vice Chair Herrera.
I'll go first. So we had the opportunity to go down to Washington DC with the Chamber, Pierce County and Tacoma Chamber of Commerce. This is over several days, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the economic development part of it, because we talked a little bit about that and how things that are happening in Washington DC, which are happening very quickly, affect Washington State. The Port of Tacoma highlighted that what is kind of happening right now is we're actually seeing an increase of imports right now, or just prior to the full tariffs that were coming in anticipation of tariffs actually taking hold. So we've been seeing an increase of containers in the Port of Tacoma and stuff like that. So, but of course, they were also talking about the tariffs and how it might take a drop, but things have changed since we've been back even. since then. So Port of Tacoma also talked about their how they want to diversify their trade throughout the world, not just with China, which we do have a lot. And they talked a lot about how our Alaska partners, TOTE, is affected by all these things. In general, it's just basically when the Port of Tacoma sneezes, the whole county could catch a cold. So they're monitoring things, they're adjusting as things going. That I learned a lot of things talking to all the stakeholders there. And I know Dave has a couple more things, and I'll let my other colleagues speak. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Burrell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to kind of give you our agenda, how we work through it. It was a pretty packed couple of days. Just some of the issues that we talked about, and Councilmember Herrera touched on some of them, but agriculture, immigration, tariffs, that was done with Congressman Dan Newhouse, who is only one of 2 Republicans in Washington State that serves Eastern Washington. And then we had Emily Randall, Congresswoman Emily Randall, talk to us a little bit during lunch. We had healthcare with Congresswoman Kim Schreier, national key Ukrainian, Russian, China role on JBLM. Keynote was Congressman Adam Smith. And then we had some joint receptions with the Greater Spokane group. And then we had a discussion on budget and appropriations and DOGE impacts of business by Senator Patty Murray. We had discussions with Senator Cantwell pertaining to trade, and then Congresswoman Strickland also addressed us on JBLM issues, and then Congressman Rick Larsen also gave us an update on transportation. So at the time that we were there, my interpretation of what was going on, and this kind of seemed to be the theme, was just everyone was kind of caught up in a little bit of chaos. That seemed to be the word that everyone was using. And depending on who you talk to, good chaos versus bad chaos. It was very enlightening. Several of the Congress members took the tack of a more cooperative pathway forward. Some of the delegation wasn't going to be cooperative on anything. So that was apparent. I think there again, one of the things that seemed to come out when we talked to different lobbyists, we did meet with Dale Earn, and but was able to talk to several lobbyists, and they basically said that, a new administration coming in, there is going to be challenges on how they want to run their administration. And some of them are a little bit more, they just come in and business as usual. Others, there's been a lot of shakeup. I think in the last 20 years, this is probably the most shakeup that has happened. But there again, that is not always a bad thing. So I think what we've seen in the last 3 weeks is kind of things have calmed down a little bit. Things are starting to normalize. We've seen a total shift in the tariff wars, where it seems like, okay, you know, the drum beating, as it were, from each nation has settled down, and people are now discussing, and there seems to be an agreement on a lot of the tariffs moving forward. So I think that will run its course. Obviously, you know, we are very trade, how should we say, trade dependent here in Washington State. So our delegation from the port was very concerned. And you know, there again, rightfully so. So from that standpoint, I think things have calmed down a little bit. We had, Councilmember Herrera and myself had one-on-one meetings with Congresswoman Strickland and Congresswoman Schreier. And I appreciate Dale Earn's help and Hugh kind of getting that going. But we talked with my talk with Maryland Congresswoman Strickland was thanking her for her investment in the food insecurity challenges that we have in East Pierce County. And she has invested into the Good Roots Northwest locker program. And we were able to deliver a package from Good Roots Northwest. And she was very appreciative of that. I know Paul touched on veteran issues with her, which she was very receptive with on. And then with Council or Congresswoman Schreier, we did a broad spectrum of issues. One of the things that I brought to her was over 100 letters of support for the Fairfax Bridge and the Carbon River corridor. And we were able to get those letters within 48 hours, which I was amazed at. But Maria Wilcox from Wilkeson, she's the town clerk, was able to get all these letters together, and they were great. Wilkeson Elementary did pictures, and I know Congresswoman Schreier really appreciated that. But the main message was, you know, what is the national parks going to do with their property, their resources over there, and what is the Forest Service going to do? Because that whole area is now cut off. So that was interesting discussion, and also the businesses. We also talked about Department of Emergency Management, the conversion of the Civil Air Patrol building and what that meant to wildfires in the area. And that's a great project moving forward that is state funded. We talked about the Jones Levy. We talked about homelessness funding. We talk about PILT funding. And there again, Councilmember Herrera talked about veteran issues with her. So, you know, there again, I think it was a great conversation to be able to have that one-on-one meeting with them. It was an interesting time, especially for Congresswoman Schreier, because they were dealing with Medicaid and the whole dynamic and how that was playing out. But it was really great to be able to give her a package from Good Roots Northwest that had, and the title was a little positive energy in your life right now. And she looked at that and she just cracked up. And from then, the whole tone changed. And it was no negative. It was like, it was great to bring a little bit of sunshine into her life. And this is one of the things that I kept hearing from a lot of individuals there is, not, as time goes by, things will change and the opinions will change. But I just wanted to read something. I just finished a book that David Baldecki just wrote called A Calamity of Souls. It recreates Virginia in the throes of the civil rights movement. And it was a story about using the law in the courtrooms as a stage for false assumption and stubborn humanity and the courage to do the right thing. And one of the quotes that I saw, that I read in there was, "I pray for a day when this country moves forward together as one nation and one united people. Divided is when we are at our weakest. We are called the United States of America for a reason, because when we are truly united, there is nothing on earth that can defeat us." And right now, we are a divided nation, no doubt about it. You can walk the halls down in Congress and the lines have been drawn in the sand. And it's very unfortunate that we're at that point. And, we'll see how it plays out, but, hopefully at some point we can come together on a common cause and move forward. So with that, I will turn it over. Thank you. Appreciate you allowing me to speak.
Thank you for the comments and sharing. Councilmember Krueger, your light's not on.
Oh.
Do
Do you have to have it on?
No, I just
Oh.
wasn't sure.
Thank you. Well, I don't know that there's a much left to reminisce about because Councilmember Morel did such a great job summarizing much of what we all saw, and Councilmember Herrera as well. I'll claim the newbie. I had never been to DC. I was more like a tourist going, oh my gosh, what? And it just puts you in the throes of what was it like, 250 years ago, or whatever the exact numbers are. But I was just in awe, but I also, going through the Capitol, in the whatever buildings that we were in, it just was such a different time today than what it was then. And there are kids everywhere. And then you go into the meeting rooms. It made me feel a lot like being at the Ledge when you had a lobby day and a group comes in and the member comes and speaks. And I was listening to all the same people, and I was trying to think of what were some of the higher points as well. In listening, we had the panel, and Christine was talking about in the energy that they were losing, was it 750 megawatts? And then they have their quest for 2045 to hit the net zero emissions. And mentioned a 34,000 square foot energy building going in the Puyallup area. And I have to agree on the port when they were talking on the importance of our port and trade and the economic development of that. And I believe we are not, we are second to the Vancouver BC port. We should be miles ahead of their development. I appreciated Councilmember Morel speaking on behalf of the Economic Development Board for Mrs. Boblett and sharing the Pivot to Pierce program. And where else was it? Katie had discussed the Workforce Central, so that was brought forth to the many members of the delegation. And it was interesting listening to Congressman Larson and discussing helping the airport up north of there's the Mount Vernon EV chargers being put in, the high-speed Cascadia project he mentioned, and rail grants. And it looks like, having that infrastructure going from the north to the south can be very beneficial, particularly that's going to be, through Pierce County. And that, oh, and perhaps also a gal Kiko mentioned on Canadian development and the need for wine. They had a freeze in BC and they lost their supply of grapes. So that's a great opportunity, perhaps more so for Eastern Washington, but we have a lot of wine people here in the county, and there's a lot of opportunity for that. And I'll just say I very much look forward to doing a repeat trip, and I can go with a little bit more experienced view on things to do and look at. It is something I highly recommend that folks, make a trip, connect, and get to know some of their members and others in the community. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you for sharing your experiences and representing Pierce County. I will let colleagues reach out if they have specific questions, but I really wanted to make sure we took some time to kind of hear what you were seeing, because things are a little different than the last time the council was in Washington, DC. So you're teasing me when you do that, Councilmember Morrell, when you're like right near the button. Do you have something to add?
Well, I just don't want you to hit your gavel too quick.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anything else that any council members would like to bring up? Councilmember Morrell, thank you for letting me know.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. Had the privilege to present a proclamation to the 1979 women's softball team at Stadium High School. They were being inducted into the Hall of Fame. And these were the 7 ladies that showed up, and I appreciate Jair showing up and taking this picture. But, here it is. Wow, we were looking at, 40 years later. And a lot of them are at the tail end of their careers. And 4 of them live in Arizona, of all things. And one of the ladies there told us stories about at the age of 18, she became a firefighter in Seattle. And the challenges that she went through, 40 years ago in that male-dominated arena would probably make your toes curl. But she just retired this year after 42 years in the fire service in Seattle. And a couple of the others are just, like I say, at the end of their careers, but they were really appreciative of the proclamation. Okay, that is my sister on my left. And she was an All-American out of Stadium High School. Softball was one of the things that she excelled at, but she was a basketball player and got a full ride scholarship to LSU. And, played with Shaq. So anyway, but like I say, I just appreciate the opportunity of the council to be able to take a proclamation to an event like this. Stadium High School, it was the first time that something like, and they didn't know what to do with it. I said, I'll handle it. I'll read it. I'll deal with it. So the copy will be included in the Hall of Fame. And so it was just a great event to go to. So thanks, council, for the opportunity. Thanks for writing the proclamation and Jair showing up and, taking pictures. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much for sharing. And I love the idea of us taking proclamations and other ways of recognizing our communities on the road. There's lots of really great things happening across Pierce County, and sometimes we get stuck here on the 10th floor and don't get to see it. So thank you to the staff that help us get out. With that, we are adjourned. See you back at 3.
Goes over here.